What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the first episode of my 2023 Halloween special. I'm a little late to the game on this. I wanted to start uploading these videos starting October 1st, but just have so much going on in college. I was busy with the last video and there were some upload troubles that were happening with it, which delayed the filming of these videos, and I have 20 videos planned for this special. We're going to be talking about 20 different films, and I really hope that I can get them all filmed, edited, and uploaded all within the month of October. Pray for me. October is my favorite time of year. Fall is probably my favorite season. Its only competition is really winter, and horror is definitely one of my favorite movie genres, definitely top 3. Halloween is my favorite holiday. I don't really think there's any other holiday that even holds a candle to it. Once again, the only competition I think would probably be Christmas. And I love Christmas, but selfishly speaking, I have way more fun on Halloween than I do on Christmas. That's just how I am. So welcome to the 2023 Halloween special. I hope you guys are excited as I am to talk about a bunch of great horror films this month. And I thought it would be kind of cool to start off with kind of an unconventional pick for yearly Halloween watching. Most people have their select films that they like to watch around this time of year, and usually none of the films on those lists are even from the era that this film is from or are of the nature that this film is. Which is exactly why I wanted to talk about it on the Halloween special this year, and why I wanted it to be the first episode that would kick off the whole special. So let's get into it. Tonight I'm reviewing the classic silent horror film Nosferatu. It was released in 1922, directed by F.W. Murnau, and it starred Max Schreck, Gustav van Wangenheim, and Greta Schroeder, and is based on the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker, though it does tweak and change certain aspects of that story for the purposes of this film. But if you don't know the backstory of this film's production, they did not get the rights to that copyrighted material. And eventually, when this film made its way to the United States, Bram Stoker's estate found out about it and won a lawsuit against the production company of this film. Because while they did change certain aspects of the story and certain characters and names and things like that, the story itself, the overall beats, the general idea and concept, and a lot of the lore was taken right from Bram Stoker's original genius novel. And they tried to completely bury this movie. They tried to make sure that nobody saw this movie after its original release, but that obviously didn't work because I'm sitting here in a college dorm room at 18 years old in 2023 talking about it, so somebody didn't do their job good enough. If you know anything about the history of horror, or even just the history of film in general, you've at least heard of Nosferatu. Despite the legal troubles that this movie's production went through upon its release, it is still an absolutely groundbreaking, revolutionary piece of filmmaking. And that's clear from the moment you start this movie. From the very beginning of this movie, you can tell that this is a very well-shot, well-written film that is going to capture the horror of this story incredibly well. Film fans owe a lot of thanks and gratitude to this film because it really pioneered and revolutionized the way we capture horror and suspense sequences in movies. This film is filled with haunting imagery that is sure to give you nightmares long after viewing, and I know that the first time I watched it, which by the way was in 8th grade, but I absolutely adored it even at that age, and the imagery in this movie, as I said, stuck with me. Since my very first viewing, I could not look away from the screen. I mean, it contains some of the most iconic images in film history. We have all seen that one shot of the shadow creeping up the staircase. That's just ingrained in our culture now. But one of the most impressive things about this movie is how easy it is to understand. Many silent films have trouble communicating their story fully, effectively to the audience due to the fact that they're limited to the fact that they have no sound and really just have to pantomime the entire story. Yes, you can cut away to subtitles and things like that in movies like this, and they do in this film, as they do in most, if not all, silent films from the era, but the thing about it is, back then, film was still such an awe-inspiring spectacle to common audiences, and they wanted to spend more time looking at the visual things happening on screen rather than reading a cue card. So the filmmakers, while they still had to at some points in the film rely on cutting to a cue card to get across what the characters were saying, for the majority of this film and others like it, they had to rely on the talent of their actors. And they did an excellent job at making sure that viewers understood what the plot of this movie was, what the characters' motivations were, which are established extremely well. And the performances in this film are absolutely incredible. The casting of Max Schreck as Count Orlok, as we come to know him in the film, I don't think that there could have been a better actor for this role. Just the look of this man, the physicality that he was able to bring to the character, combined with very impressive, for the time, makeup and prosthetic work, it honestly just brings this character to life, and it is chilling to witness. But also, the reactions in certain scenes on these other actors' faces when something terrifying is happening, and when they don't know what to make of it, and they're just so scared, the reactions on their faces are breathtaking still to this day. They really did a good job at communicating their emotions to the audience. And as I said, those characters and their motivations are very well established. From the very beginning, it's established that there's a real estate agent in this town that the movie takes place for the most part in, who pays his employees very well. You learn that our lead character Thomas is in need of money, and he gets an offer from this real estate agent. Hey, this guy named Count Orlok wants to purchase this house across the street from your own. I'll pay you a pretty penny for this job. All you gotta do is travel out to Transylvania, meet Count Orlok, and sign off on the deal. So you understand the motivations from the very beginning, and Thomas is none the wiser about the dangers that await him in Transylvania, because you gotta recognize that at the time, because of the fact that Transylvania wasn't as recognizable and as known of a thing in pop culture as it is today, audiences watching this film were like, okay, this guy named Count Orlok lives in this place named Transylvania, and he wants to buy this house and it'll pay him a bunch of money? Yeah, absolutely, take the job, sounds like a good gig. So he does take the job and he heads out there, and I love the way that they build up the suspense around Orlok as a character. Early in the film, after Thomas has already set out on his journey, he communicates to some other people in a pub that he stops at that he's going to meet Count Orlok, and the way all of these people react to this physically is very, very tense, and you instantly know, oh crap, there is something dark happening up on that hill. This tension is heightened later when Thomas is reading a storybook about Nosferatu, which translates into English to vampires. He's reading up on some of the lore and some of the abilities of these fabled creatures. And to him, he's just reading, you know, wives' tales, just like this stuff isn't true, it's just folk tales, you know, the stuff of legends. But of course, we as the audience reasonably suspect that the stuff he's reading in that book is very much true in the story of this film, and it just makes it all the more suspenseful when he gets closer and closer to his destination. And it's a very well structured narrative throughout the movie. The film takes its time, unlike many from that era, to set up its characters, make you care about them, flesh them out, establish their motivations very well. You meet Thomas's wife, you get a sense of how much these two people really love each other. And so while you're happy for Thomas that he's getting this opportunity to make this insane amount of money, you are sad when he has to set off on his journey because he has to leave his wife. Which is another reason why the tension in this movie is so tangible, because when you start to realize the more sinister things going on under the surface, you become worried for Thomas and therefore worried for his wife, worried that they're never going to get to see each other again. Because you cut back to a subplot with his wife way back home, her name's Helen, and just like Thomas upon arriving in Transylvania, she's having these weird feelings, these strange visions and these dreams that she can't quite explain. And so as the threat in the film becomes ever more present, you begin to worry more and more about these characters and whether or not they'll find each other again. I mean, it's really unprecedented that a film this old follows the modern day rules of screenwriting that we all abide by now so well over 100 years ago. And to pile onto that, it's extremely watchable and surprisingly well paced. Now when it comes to the horror genre, there's a lot of very iconic sequences in different films. Take the final attack on the boat in Jaws, the final showdown between Laurie and Michael Myers in the original Halloween. But long before any of those other iconic films that more people are aware of today, Nosferatu had one of the best and most suspenseful, well slow-paced sequences in horror history, that being the invasion of the ship. This sequence is honestly genius. Count Orlok is able to smuggle himself onto the ship as a stowaway, and nobody else on the ship, the captain or the crew, are aware of this. The sequence begins when one of their crew members falls ill and has to spend his time down below deck laying and trying to get better. He then passes away from this illness and they have to throw his body overboard. And then Count Orlok awakens and picks off these crew members and then the captain one by one. This scene contains some of the most iconic images in film history, and it is absolutely thrilling. And honestly, the entire last third of this movie is exactly that. Thrilling. It genuinely is amazing that this film came out about 101 years ago and is still, as a silent film, able to evoke this much tension and suspense, this very warm and tense feeling into the viewer. I mean, it's unprecedented. So many movies from this era suffer from being boring and from being not really the easiest films to understand narratively speaking, but Nosferatu hit all those beats exactly right for what the filmmakers had at their disposal. That being said, I do have one issue with the movie, and it's not a massive issue because I understand that at the time, everything that they had already accomplished with this movie was insanely revolutionary. But when Count Orlok gets to the mainland, I feel like there's a bit of wasted potential with what they could have done with that because, and yes, I'm going to spoil the movie, it's been out for 100 years. You've had time to watch it if you haven't, I'm sorry. When Count Orlok gets to the mainland, he really just goes directly to Helen, which is the plot point that was set up ever since he saw the picture of Helen way back towards the first act of the movie. But at the same time, the idea of this horrifying creature being in this mainland town with all these residents who are paranoid about the Black Plague, who don't know that it's a vampire who killed those men. They think it's the plague. They're all isolating themselves in their houses. Night falls and everybody's so scared and paranoid and they're completely unaware that there is a bloodthirsty monster roaming the streets. I just feel like there's so much more they could have done with that. There's some really cool sequences that I think they could have pulled off with it, but they just resort to the original script that they wrote where he just gets to the mainland, goes to the house that he wanted to buy, and then goes and kills Helen. Which again, it's a well-realized arc. It's the plot point they were setting up, they established it, and they executed it exactly how it should have been done. I'm just saying I think they could have worked in some pretty fun and innovative sequences visually with that concept of this creature being loose in this town, but everybody just thinking it's a virus that's going around. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity. But all that being said, Nosferatu is still an enduring classic, and it continues to be one of the most iconic films ever made, especially in the horror genre. Many of our favorite horror movies, particularly vampire horror, we probably wouldn't have it today without Nosferatu. It remains very scary and very thrilling to this day. It's my favorite silent film, and I'm going to give Nosferatu a 9 out of 10. I know that a lot of people of my generation don't really pay much mind to this era of Hollywood, but just take a leap of faith, give it a chance, and you might find some of the best films of all time. Guys, thank you so much for watching episode 1 of the 2023 Halloween special. Look forward to episode 2 of said special. I'm very excited to talk about horror films this month with you guys. I will see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep